So here is a brief tour of the workroom. So we have one of our heat presses right here, and to turn it on, there's a button right here that says on, and it should always be set to 200. Set to 200, and so if you are the first one in here, then go ahead and turn it on. It takes a while to heat up. In both of these drawers are the mounting paper. So we have full sheets in here, and then in here we have also some full sheets, but also some scraps as well. So you can use any of those. If you have smaller projects, make sure to use the scraps first. We will have some of this tacking paper over here. Make sure it's clean. This one has a little bit of dirt, so you don't want to tack on that side. To turn on the tacking iron, there is a button right here in the back. So you turn that on, and that also turns on the lamp as well. We have some speakers. We're not sure if they really work, but you can try that. We also have our second hot press right here. Sometimes it works, it depends on the day. Over here is the little straight edge, and then we have pencils, scissors, this thing, we have our little razor blade. This is pokey, that should not be there. And then we'll have the
sticky tape, double-sided sticky
over here for you, and then also here is some instructions on how to label or how to mount labels. Up here we have our rulers and our measuring things and whatnot. On this side we have some of the mat board. Thanks, mat board. Also on this side as well, we have some other ones. And here, as a reminder, are the drawers that have the scrap foam core in black, white, and then we also have the mat boards. Up here, which we don't have yet, we will have foam core for you to pre-cut, or that's already pre-cut for you to use. Here is the cutting station, nicely clean. It's okay to cut on this. Our second straight edge cutter, and then our first one. This one's more preferred to use. And then over here is the corner checker. You can use this one or this one. And yeah, this is the workroom. Hello. We are going to show you how to create a label step by step. So step one is to have your completed label, and make sure that it is cut down to size. So right here we have one of our little smaller ones, and we are going to use the straight edge. It's a little bit finicky, and it doesn't have to be perfect, but I'm going to leave a little bit of room. I'm just gonna go for it and see how we have that here. And I'm going to cut off this extra white on this as well. And with this straight edge, you kind of have to just be aggressive. Okay, so that's step one. And we have a piece of foam core right here. You see how it doesn't quite fit, so I'm going to keep working at it. Perfect.
Step two of mounting a label, we are going to be tacking the label we just cut onto the foam core. Whoops. So this paper is, for the tack paper, it's typically in this drawer. And sometimes you might have to cut it to size. So we already have one that's pre-cut, and you could just use some scissors. I need some scissors right now, which are always in here, should be found within one of those cups. So we're just going to trim it so it fits the foam core. so we don't make any waste. And all we do is place it on top. And we're going to take this, which is already heated up, and we're going to tack it on. Typically you would want to use a wax paper so you don't transfer. Sometimes you can use it if you're going to be cutting off the white space. You don't have to, but to be safe, just use it. And you just hold on for 1, 2, 3, take it off, and now you can see that it's all stuck. And this is to prevent it from sliding when you put it inside the actual mount, because sometimes that happens, and your labels, if you're making multiple at once, they can overlap and then they're ruined and you have to reprint and remount. So it just helps prevent that. All right, now we're moving on to mounting it in the actual heat press. All you do is pop it in, put the wax paper over that. Make sure that this is at 200 degrees, which it is not on currently. And you slap it down, and how long do we put in for?
8 minutes.
8 minutes. And after the 8 minutes, which you should have a timer on, after the 8 minutes, you just open it back up, and it's good to go. So,
Step 3 is actually cutting out your labels, or prepping your labels to cut. So as you can see here, we need to have a 1/2 inch margin around the entire label. So you have a few options to accomplish this. You can either draw it with a ruler, you can put it on your label before you print it. So for example, we accomplish this through Publisher, or if you have a label like this that has color, then you can just cut along this edge, or last one is to create a label that has a border, such as this. So we are going to practice with this blank label, and we are going to draw the 1/2 inch margin around it. So first we have to grab our rulers, which we have abundance over here. So you can pick whichever one you want. I always am picky because the backside has this little stuff behind it, and some of them are worn thin and some are not. Then you can grab a pencil, which they can be found over here. And next we're going to measure it. So it's a process, it's not fast. So first, this one is almost 1/2 inch, you see? So from the letters to about right here is 1/2. So I'm going to make a little mark right here in a few different places. And I'm going to draw the line as straight as I can. What's really nice is you can use this paper right here, the edge of the paper, to help you line up the ruler. So that looks pretty straight for the most part. And you draw it very, very lightly, which that's not super light, but that's close enough. And then yeah, so check with all of them. This one isn't quite either. Make sure it's straight. And same for down here. You might have to move your ruler a little bit. 1/2. Okay, so I'm gonna go for it. It's very careful work. All right, and the same with this side. And depending on what you want, it doesn't always have to be 1/2 inch around, but because you might have other ideas and designs, but in general, it should be about 1/2 inch. All right, there's that.
So this is step 4. I'm just going to be talking a little bit about mistakes that can occur when cutting and mounting the label. So as you can see here, there's a little bubble, and I tried multiple times to put this back into the mount, into the heat press, and to remove the bubble. And it is successful on a few, so you can retry to press it down, and sometimes it may be successful, but oftentimes, not often, but like every so often, there's a bubble that just won't go down, so you're just gonna have to reprint it, and that sucks, but that's just what's gonna happen. And then here on this label, I made these lines very thin, so you have to be very careful when cutting. So I'm gonna show you right here on this line. Because the razor blade sits slightly off from this line, you may think that you are cutting on the line, off the line, but you may actually be cutting the line itself. So you have to make sure that you have it underneath the black portion of it. And you just got to go for it. You can line it up as best as you can, and then it'll come out. Oh, actually did a pretty good job. And then when you see here, these are some of these scuffs. You can always just push those in. And we have another tool that Meegan will show you in a moment that we can use that also helps push in all these little edges and can remove any tears. With this one, as you can see, this line was cut off. You just have to be very careful when you're placing it on the actual cutter. But, you know, sometimes if you cut the line off, you can decide that that's just going to be how it might look, and you can go with it. It just depends. But this one I couldn't reuse because there's a bubble. Anyways.
So this is a continuation of step 4. So now that we have our label, we are going to cut this one actually on the line. These lines are supposed to help you cut things straight. So what you do is that you lift this all the way up, and this right here isn't always straight. So I would rely more on these really thin lines that we have right here as best as you can. So I'm going to cut this line first. So I'm going to bring this down and line it up. I'm going to cut exactly on the line. And when that is the case, if you can see, there's this line right here. I put this a little bit behind this line so I can cut it. And what I do is I check and see. I look this way, look at the blade and see where it hits. That's just like an extra thing that you don't really have to do, but I'm a perfectionist. Okay, that looks good. And I check all the way so that it's perfectly straight, and you just have to keep playing around with it. And when you're ready to cut, you bring it all the way, and then you pull it back. Okay, so that went pretty well, I think. Let's see. Looks good. All right, let me do the next cut. I'll just go ahead with this. Sometimes the blade is a little dull in this case, so it's a little bit harder. You can see right there that like I still have a little bit of pencil, so we can erase that or cut it. And then the next line. Okay, that one I was too lazy and I didn't cut it right. So if you see, it's a little bit weirdly angled. And how we can check that is if we grab one of these beautiful things and we line it up and straight. And that's not okay. So we want to make sure that our angles are perfect. Even, yeah, see how that's not good. But this one, check and see if that one's perfect. See, like there's not really, I mean, it's slightly off, but it's not terrible. So, okay, so in order to fix this, what can we do? So what I would recommend is just trying to go from this shortest line right here and just cutting it across. That means that there's a little bit less than half an inch between the letter and the edge, which isn't the end of the world. So I'm going to take this and try to line up as best I can. And this is where it gets tricky. So is this straight? No. Bring it down here. So if you see that this side is a little bit thicker and this side's thinner, and that's the cut that we want to make because this side is uneven. So we're going to make the cut. Hopefully it works. Well, it looks okay. Let's measure it. It's okay on this side. Not this side. All right, it works. So when stuff like that happens, you just have to be really patient with yourself and make the tiny movements so that these can be fixed. And sometimes our edges, they're a little bit wonky. So if you look right here, that's a little bit weird. So we take this tool, it's called the bone tool, and we kind of lightly sand it so that it's flat and straight. Okay.
This is step 5. So we're going to be talking about mat board. So after you finished cutting your label, you can place your finished cut label on a piece of mat board, and that kind of gives it another dimension, another design. Because it adds this border, sometimes it can look very finished. You do not have to use it, but it's pretty cool sometimes to add another layer, another color, tie in your color scheme, your color story. And you can also double layer the mat board and gives it more dimension. And sometimes you can do it in a different way, such as this, where you can have multiple labels on a piece of mat board. It doesn't have to be perfectly rectangular like this one. So you could do be creative, use your imagination. You don't have to be too creative with it, but there's a lot of different options. You can also make just like, I'll show you an example, but when you're cutting mat board, you can use a razor blade, but when you're cutting large pieces of mat board, you should use the main cutter. So I'm just going to show you with the razor blade first. So let's just say you have something small and you want to or whatever label, and you want to just have something for the corners, you can also do that. So you should cut the front of the mat board, because when you cut through, it's going to push anything ugly to the back. You might have to cut it a few times. Now this isn't like a perfect triangle, don't. But then you can have it something like that. And then you can have it on both sides like that and that's pretty cool too. But see, it doesn't show, never mind. Okay. And so don't be afraid to use the scrap, which you can find in here. The scrap mat board and foam cores are right here in these drawers, which you should find with your names on them. These are all going to be your drawers. And most of the mat board will just be found around this space. So what I talked about earlier, don't be afraid to be a little creative. You can, with the mat board, there's different layers. So you can cut and peel the layers off of the mat board, and then you can create some other design on them. Like, for example, I use this as a tree branch, and so I made the little etchings of from the wood like that you normally see on bark. So, you know, just think about your space and think about what you might want to use, and be creative. And also, if you have a label that might seem like it is being hidden away, or that you want to have pop out more to the visitors, you can add a large piece of foam core that will allow that dimension, allow that visibility. Lastly, I just want to show you how to cut it on the main cutter. Now this one is a little harder to use than the one that we were using earlier, so I would recommend using the other main cutter, but if you need to, this one is fine. So you do want the foam, you want the mat board facing, like the color facing you. I keep flipping it, so that's something to be mindful of. And then you're just gonna press down after you get it all in line and cut it, and then it'll be a clean line, because you see here how it cut that and it got a little messed up on the corner. That will be in the back of it so that you don't see it. So that's why you always want to have the color facing up when you cut. And other than that, that's mat board.